There we go. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Break Into Law School. For those of you who are new and don't know me, my name is Sydney Montgomery and I'm the CEO of S. Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where I specialize in working with first generation and minority applicants. Should you take the November LSAT? Should you register for the November LSAT? If you're watching this video, you know that you only have another 5 days to make that decision. And this is a big question because honestly, whether or not you register or take the November LSAT could really impact a lot of your timing for the law school application cycle. Let me just make sure that everyone can see me okay and hear me okay. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Welcome also to those that are watching on Facebook, who are watching on Instagram, watching on LinkedIn, watching on YouTube. I'm really excited to be with you today so that we can dive into whether or not you should take this November LSAT, whether you should register for the November LSAT even if you don't take it, what that means, what happens if you want to apply but you still want to register for the November LSAT, all things timing. We're also going to be covering what you need to be doing in September, now that September is actually almost over, if you want to stay on target with your applications. So let's dive in. That first question of whether or not you should be registering for the November LSAT really just depends on what your LSAT journey has been so far. Now, if you're the type of person who this is maybe your third or even your fourth LSAT, LSAT allows you to take up to 3 testings in one cycle, but that application cycle resets in August. So maybe you took, the June LSAT and you took the August LSAT, and now you're taking the October LSAT. And you're trying to figure out if you should register for the November LSAT, I would say be realistic with yourself. Why are you continually retesting? You might have a really good reason for continually retesting. There might be noticeable improvements each time you've taken the test. You might have changed your test format. You might have changed your test prep, your study habits. There could be so many reasons why continuing to take the test makes sense. But again, I say I want you to be realistic with yourself and see, am I just doing the same things over and over and over again? There does sort of come a point when we hit a wall with the LSAT. And maybe you hit that wall financially. You're like, I just cannot spend any more money on this stupid test. Maybe you've hit that wall emotionally or mentally. If you're starting to feel burned out, if you're starting to feel like, I just cannot do this anymore. I've been studying for 3 to 4 hours a day since, March or February. I know some of you even longer, and we're kind of at the end of the road. Then I would want you to consider whether you think you're really going to have a market increase in your score in November. Because I know for some of you, you might not, because there might be circumstances outside of your control. There might be external work factors or family factors that aren't likely to change between now and November. And so if you're telling me, I don't think I can study anymore, or I don't think I can change my study habits, I don't think I can change my test prep plan, or I don't want to change my test prep plan, I am not able to make any significant changes between now and November, and you've already taken the test a number of times, it might be a good place to sort of take a breather, stop, and say, you know what, maybe I just apply with my October score. Alternatively, if your score is really important to you, you could wait and take a break and then restudy next year and then apply next cycle. But if you're kind of reaching a breaking point, continuing to take the test might actually make your score go down instead of go up. I think the other thing that you have to realize is that you want to make sure that you're taking enough practice tests so there's no surprises when it comes to the actual test. You should be within a certain score range. So, if you are taking the test and your score range is between a 151 and a 157, I'm just going to be very realistic with you. You're not likely to get a 170 on the November LSAT. I could be wrong. I love being proven wrong. But that's just not a score increase that's necessarily likely unless you do something to truly change what you're doing to test prep. But if you're going to be doing the same exact things, you are not likely to make that kind of score jump between now and November. Now, if you tell me, Sydney, I'm going to get a tutor, I have been doing Khan Academy and books, but now I'm going to enroll in a course. I'm going to do LSAT Demons live, and I'm going to go to all their live classes, 5 classes a day from now until November. Yeah, maybe you could make a significant increase in your score. You should be able to make a significant increase in your score if you substantially change your test prep. But like I said, if you're not going to do that, then you need to be realistic about what your goals are, what your score range is, and what you think that you can reasonably improve on between now and the November test. Some of you are already registered for October, and October might be what you're targeting your score at, but for some of you, October is the first time you're taking the LSAT exam. Maybe it's the second time you're taking the LSAT exam. This is a different situation. Because maybe the first time you took your LSAT exam, if this is your second time taking it, you had a lot of test anxiety. Well, now my question to you is different. I'm not asking you what are you doing to change your test prep. I'm asking you what are you doing to change your test anxiety? What are you doing to get those nerves under control? Are you doing mindfulness activities? Are you meditating? Are you practicing in the exact same way that you're going to ideally take the test? Are you giving yourself those, time sections under testing conditions so that your body gets used to it? What are you doing to calm your test anxiety? Because there's nothing worse than practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing, and then you go to actually take the test and you're not able to perform like you've practiced. And I know this is a feeling that a lot of my students have had. A lot of my students have experienced this, and my heart really goes out to them. But there are things that you can do. And those things are usually things that you can do in a shorter period of time. 30 days of mindfulness can really change your entire way of being. It can really change how you approach test problems. It can change how you deal with anxiety. It can change how you're dealing with the external factors that might be causing you stress that's affecting your test. So 30 days of mindfulness is definitely something that can help you get your test anxiety under control so that you can perform on test day. So if that's something that you're dealing with, then I would say registering for the November LSAT makes a lot of sense, because I want you to have a backup plan, especially if it's your first time taking it. God forbid something goes wrong. It's not going to. But just in case something goes wrong, I want you to be able to have a second administration of the LSAT in a way that is still going to allow you to submit your applications in good time. Now, the November LSAT scores are released on December 1. So that means that is really the earliest that your application can be read. December is not early. I always tell you guys I want you to apply early in the cycle. December is not early. I wouldn't go as far to say December is late, though. I think it's just in the middle. It's just on time. And I say this because I think sometimes we fall into this trap of thinking, okay, there's early and then there's late. If I'm not early, I'm immediately late. And that's not true. There's early, there's on time, and then there's late, right? Okay, February, late. Do not apply to law school in February. Please don't do it. I will just kind of say that all the way up until we get to February, and I know that in January and February people are going to be like, but Sydney, can I still apply? And we're like, I guess, but I wouldn't do it. I like to mitigate risk. That's very risky. But December is not late, okay? You can still have really good outcomes, especially if you're going to be applying with a score that is going to drastically increase your options, a score that is going to be at or above the medians of some of your top schools, or a score that's going to get you more scholarships at some lower ranked schools, and you're going to be able to go to law school for free. So that's worth it, to be honest. Like, if I had to say, okay, you could apply with a 157 in, with the October test, and you can apply in October and you can be early, or you could take the November test, get a 163, and apply in December. Listen, get that 163. That's a big increase. Now, if we're talking about 157 versus 158, that's, not a lot. But if you know that you can score at least 3 to 4 points better, whether that's because you're getting your test anxiety under control, if your practice tests are in the high 160s, but your performance is in the low 160s or high 150s, but with the right mindfulness and the right test prep, and maybe you need to do more drilling, or maybe we're going to be very honest and you realized you didn't take that many practice tests. If all of those things are true, and so that in November you can change some things so that your performance reflects your practice, I want you to take the November test. I want you to get that higher score. It is going to open so many doors for you. That 5-point increase, that's a big game changer in terms of the types of schools that you're going to be accepted to, the types of scholarship money that you're going to get. I promise you, there are lots of people who get into law school and they apply in December. Even my own students who, don't always do what I say. I love them. I love my students. Not everyone listens to me. But even some of my students who applied a little bit later than I wanted to last cycle, one of them is at Harvard right now. So there's no black and whites in this, right? Everything is nuanced. This question of timing, the question of rolling law school admissions, it's very nuanced. It's not, it's October, so don't apply, because that's silly. There are people who get into top schools who apply later than October. There are people who get into top schools who apply later than December. It's risky, but it happens. And it really depends on your own personal circumstances and what you know that you're capable of doing. The rewards have to be so much bigger than the drawbacks, right? You have to tell me why it's worth it for you to take a later LSAT administration, but there are absolutely reasons. And I know I will be doing another update video on the January LSAT when we get closer to it. It's not my favorite thing. I don't love it. There are specific scenarios, however, where I would be okay with someone taking the January LSAT. I don't love it though. Most people, you should not do it. But that is why, honestly, I recommend a lot of my students to register for the November LSAT just in case, if the October LSAT is their first or second sitting. Because if you don't register for the November LSAT and something goes crazy, Murphy's Law, right? Anything that bad that can happen does happen. If something goes crazy on the October LSAT and you didn't register for the November LSAT, the only LSAT that you can take at this point is January. I don't love that. I don't love that for you. That changes the whole game, right? You were set to apply in October, and now you're not going to be applying until pretty much close to February, because that's close to when the scores are going to be released. At this point, it's a totally different game. I would need you to blow the January LSAT out the water, but don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Register for the November LSAT just in case. Now, there's questions about, what happens if I register for the November LSAT and I take the October LSAT and my score is great? Fantastic. You can try to get a refund. LSAC goes back and forth with their whole refund situations. There's not a lot of consistency. But you can try to get a refund for your November LSAT. If you cannot get a refund for your November LSAT, you may be out $200. I understand. That's a lot of money. But you scored really well on the October LSAT, And think of that $200 as insurance, right? We all have insurance. I got car insurance. I have professional liability insurance. I have insurance for the business. I pay them. I hope to never use them. It doesn't mean it's a waste of money. My health insurance is not a waste of money if I don't go to the doctor. Because you have it just in case. Because, oh my goodness, if you were uninsured and you had to go and have a really big procedure, that's going to really set you back. Think of the November LSAT as insurance. It's insurance for your applications. It's not a great idea. It's not a great thought, rather, to be out $200. But I'd rather you be out $200 than have to take the January LSAT because you didn't have a backup plan. Now, this is very important. There are some schools for which you can submit your applications even before you take the November LSAT, if you have an LSAT on the record. But this is a conversation you need to have with admissions. Some schools will hold your application for a future testing date. So they will hold it for that pending LSAT score in November as soon as the scores get released, because they also will go straight to the school because you've already sent your credential assembly report. Then they will read it, and that can sometimes put you a little bit ahead of the pack for people who are just hitting submit themselves after they receive the November LSAT. But this is not across the board at every school. There are many schools that will not hold your application or will not consider your application, even readable if you have a pending LSAT. But there are some schools that will just make a decision based off the LSAT score that you have. So if you don't like the LSAT score that you have and you're dealing with a school that's not going to hold it, then I would rather you take the November LSAT and apply. But there are a number of schools that will hold your application for a pending LSAT score. That is a conversation that you should be having with admissions. I always talk about building relationships with admissions. Here is a great question for you to ask them. So definitely have that conversation, because that is definitely a strategy. And like I said, if you take the October LSAT and you realize, hey, my score is fantastic, you can cancel it, and then your file will be marked complete and they will be able to just read it. So there are a lot of ways to kind of work the system here. Hopefully that's making sense. Hopefully you guys are not having any questions about that. The thing that I want to mention, like I said, as we move into the end of September, early October, is that you're really having your ducks in a line. So I kind of sent out a checklist over social media the other day to make sure that everyone has started to take care of some housekeeping items. By this point, you should have sent your transcripts to LSAC. Now, let me back that up. By this point, you should have purchased your credential assembly service. It's $195. It's good for 5 years. That is what puts your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, all of that good stuff goes into that, and you pay $45 per school unless you have an LSAC fee waiver for your credential assembly service report to be sent to every school. You need to purchase the credential assembly service before you can put your recommenders in, which brings me to my next checklist point. All of you should have asked for your letters of recommendation by now, because it is courteous to give people at least 1 month. And so we're at the end of September. If you're trying to apply still in October, that means you need to get to asking. And if you don't already have my free guide, definitely download it, because there's information in there about how to ask and secure strong letters of recommendation, what you can be providing to the recommender, whether or not you should be asking academic professors or employers. Hot tip, most schools prefer academic letters. You should try to get at least 2, unless you've been out of school for more than 5 years. But even then, 1 is still great. All of that is in my free essential guide to applying to law school, which you can find in the comments below. But you need to make sure that you have asked your recommenders, you've purchased the credential assembly service, you've had your transcripts set. You need transcripts sent from study abroad. You need transcripts sent from international institutions. If you were a dual enrollment student, you're going to need transcripts sent from that community college. If you took any random community college courses, you're going to need transcripts sent for that. So all of that can take time. You want to make sure that you get the ball rolling on that. All of you should have started your personal statement. I'm looking at you. Please make sure that you have started your personal statement. You cannot write your personal statement in a weekend or a week. It takes a few drafts. You also have a diversity statement. You may have some optional essays. You may have an addenda. You have your resume. I don't want you to forsake the written parts of your application because you're so focused on the LSAT. The LSAT is super important. It is. But a high LSAT score is not enough. I know plenty of people, and deans have said this, there are plenty of people who score really high in the LSAT, 178, 179, and they don't get into law school. It's real. It happens. And you're like, why? Because their application materials were a mess. They were just a mess. So I don't want that to happen to you. You need to make sure that everything is in alignment with your law school applications. Your LSAT's great. Your GPA is what it is. For most of you at this point, there's nothing you can do about it. But your essays, you have so much control about your essays. I'm actually really excited because I just released the personal statement breakdown. It's a mini course. It's only $37. The link is right below. You can get that, and I will walk you through reviews of actual personal statements of students that I've worked with, students that are now at top schools, some who have gotten full ride scholarships. I will walk you through the good and the bad. You'll get to see the transformations of their essays, and then I also provide you a video on some common mistakes. And then I also provide you 5 different sample essays and an overview of what goes into your personal statement. There is so much value packed into this, but I want to give it to you for just $37 because I don't want finances to be a stumbling block to your strong personal statement. I want you to be able to get quality advice. I want you to look at examples and see the bad examples and see the good examples, and then look at your own essay and figure out, am I more like this? Am I more like that? I want you to understand how to show and not tell, how to use narrative writing, how to strike the right tone, how to center yourself. I want to walk you through all of those things. And so in the link below, you can see how you can get access to the course for just $37. That course, that mini course, will definitely help you. And if you need any kind of hourly consulting, you can always find that. If you just want someone to read over your personal statement or just to get some feedback on your written materials, I am so happy to do that. And I'm really happy to give 50% off all hourly consulting to LSEC fee waiver students, but then 10% off to all frontline workers, first responders, military veterans, current HBCU students, and Kappa Alpha Theta members. So definitely check out my website, lauda@montgomeryconsulting.com/law school hourly services. The link is also below, where you can find out more information about how you can get guidance with your personal statement. But like I said, you should have all started your personal statement by now. It's very important. So those things, like I said, you want to purchase the credential assembly service. You want to ask your letters of recommendation. You want to make sure that you've started your personal statement and you've sent all your transcripts. All of those things should be done before we get to October. So you have a couple of days, you've got about a week. Make sure that you get those ducks in a row so that you're not waiting to the last minute, especially with those letters of recommendation, because that's not something that is fully in your control with timing. And some professors, they get a lot of requests, and at some point they stop taking requests, and you don't want to have missed out on your favorite professor because he's already said yes to all the students that he's going to write letters for this semester. So ask early, ask with a strong ask, with those anecdotes, give them some good information, and give them enough time to write your letters of recommendation. Now, I want to talk to you about what to do, going back to the LSAT a little bit, if you're not ready for October, or maybe you're saying, I might not be ready for the November LSAT either. Maybe you haven't started studying for the LSAT at all. What do you do? It's 2 things. First, if you have not already, take an LSAT diagnostic test. You might not be as far away as you think you are from your goal score. There are some score increases that are very reasonable with the amount of time that we have between now and the November LSAT. If you're only 10 points away from your goal score, you still have enough time. You want to make sure that you are very serious and invested in the right kind of test prep, though. I have a list of recommended tutors and test prep courses on my site, law.smontgomeryconsulting.com/recommended-tutors. Go there, see the different test prep options and the different tutors that I recommend as well. But you will still have that plan. If you are more than 20 points away from where you want to be, I would seriously consider maybe taking some time to not rush the process. I have a number of students that I've already started working with for next cycle. I love it when students are early like that. First off, the students that are just that prepared, I can really see it in also some of their soft qualities, their resumes. Law schools love to see prepared applications. They don't like to see applications that are just kind of thrown together. So, if you're someone you haven't started studying for the LSAT at all, you take your diagnostic score, it's like 139, you're very far away from where you want to be, I don't want you to settle, because your law school journey, your law school career, it's for life. This is your alumni base that you're going to continue to have with you. I love my alma mater. I love Harvard, and not just because it's Harvard or whatever, but I really love the people. I love the administration. I love the staff. I loved my classmates. I loved my section mates. I had a good time in law school, guys. I loved the parties. I was the Black Law Student Association co-head social chair for 2 years, and it was fantastic. I danced in parody for 2 years. I was co-head choreographer. I loved it. And actually, Harvard Law School just published a blog, kind of an interview, getting to know me, and you can definitely check that out. I talk a little bit in there about some of my favorite moments at Harvard, what I wish I had known, the advice that really saved me from making terrible decisions during my time in law school, and also advice for applicants. So definitely make sure that you check out that blog. It's right there on the HLS website. I'm so thankful to them for their continual support. Even in this new, career venture that I have, I've been consulting since 2012, but making the decision to pivot away from practicing law to educational consulting, it's been phenomenal to have the support of my alma mater in this transition. And you want the support of your alma mater as well. You want to go to a school that you love to talk about for years and years and years and years. And you're not going to get that if you just rush the process. You're not going to get that if you just take any school because even though you haven't started the process, you really want to be in school next fall. Just slow down and think about, good things come to those who wait, right? The plans of the diligent lead to abundance. You too can be diligent and you can receive your abundance. So I want you, as we're going through this application season, as we continue, through the months, to just be thinking about, am I really putting myself first? I always say don't make long-term decisions based off of short-term emotions. So really focus on that as well. Focus on what's going to be good for your long-term career. And I know that you will find success. So to recap, today we talked about when you should take the November LSAT and when maybe the November LSAT isn't the greatest idea. And a lot of that comes down to how many LSAT exams you've already taken, whether or not you're going to do anything between now and November to substantially change either your test anxiety and your mindset or your test prep plans and your mastery of the material. We talked about how the November LSAT can be seen as insurance. It's insurance that you don't have to take the January LSAT, and why the January LSAT's not an ideal time for most students. We talked about timing and whether or not the November LSAT would make you too late. It won't. You won't be early, but if you can really make sure to have that strong score in November, it might be worth it. We talked about what you need to make sure that you are doing now that it is the end of September. I gave you a checklist of those things. I also told you about my new mini course, the Personal Statement Breakdown, for $37, which you can find the link below. And we talked about what to do if you have not started studying for the LSAT at all. And obviously you're not taking October because you didn't register, but you're not feeling like you're going to be ready for November either. And we talked about different ways to figure out what the best game plan is for you. So now is my favorite time where I answer your questions. You can always submit questions at bit.ly/breakintolawschool, or you can watch live, and I always answer questions here. So let me just see. Okay. Any advice for students registered for October but wondering whether to register for November just in case? So yes, that was the whole first part of the video. Definitely go back and listen to it. We talked about how November can be seen as insurance, and so you said you took the August LSAT and you want a higher score, but you have no idea how you'll balance writing, taking 2 more LSATs, and applying by early November. So one of the things that we discussed is that the November LSAT can be a great insurance. Don't apologize. It's totally fine. I understand people are busy. This is lunch. Hopefully you had something good to eat for lunch or breakfast if you're on the West Coast. Either way, it's definitively food time. So you never have to apologize for not watching the beginning of the video. I always think it's good to register for November if it's if October is going to be the first or second time that you're taking the LSAT, because you do kind of want that insurance that you don't have to take January. You might not be able to get a refund, kind of depending on what the LSAT policies are. So it is $200, but as I expressed about like car insurance and health insurance and business insurance, it is important. But sometimes we are okay if we don't have to use it. But it's never a waste of money to have insurance. And so the thing is, in case something goes horribly awry with the October test, the October test, I don't want you to then be in a position of only having the January test to take, because that puts your applications in a completely different time frame. So I would register for the November test. You have until September 29th. I would just do it today because, listen, I put things on my to-do list and then I wake up the day after and I'm like, oh my God, like always. It's like my body knows that I missed the deadline. That obviously it couldn't tell me on the day of the deadline, but my body just knows the day after the deadline that I missed the deadline. I don't know if your bodies are like that, but mine, it just comes to me. So I would just do it today. That way you have it. And then I know that you're balancing a lot of things. I would say, look and see kind of what went wrong with the August LSAT. What are your practice scores for the October LSAT? Like, what is the range? Do you think that you'll be able to do significantly better in November? Have you been working on your test anxiety, on your mindfulness? Do you need to change test prep courses or tutors? All of those things I would investigate as we try to do the October test, which is just in, a couple of weeks, but then really also looking for the November test. And then I would say, in terms of balance, I know it can be really hard, but that is why it's really important to have a plan and to maybe get some guidance. If you have guidance, listen, I keep my students accountable. They know I will text them all the time. Where is this? Where is it? I need it. How are you doing on that? I do 9th through 12th grade college counseling as well, and I have been known to call some students on a Sunday morning in love, but also because I know that I don't want them to play themselves. Everything is very busy right now, but in 30 to 45 days, this will all be over. You're in the grind, but it's a big push. And in 30 to 45 days, this will all be over, and you will be so happy that you grinded it out. So it's going to be a hard month. It's going to be a hard month and a half. But you will come out better on the other side. So I know it's hard to balance right now, but just think your entire future is going to thank you for the grind that you're putting in right now. Another question says, hello, I took the April LSAT for the first time and I canceled my score. Should I write an addendum for the canceled test score? You don't always need to. No. There are some schools that have very specific policies on that. Columbia is one of them. They just like to know why you've taken more than one LSAT. But for the most part, you don't really need to. I like to say that they are not in the business of trying to read more than they need to. They have a lot to read. if you canceled your April score, but then you go in and you take, I don't know if you said for the first time you took it in April. So if this will be your second time taking the test and you score well and that's it, you don't need to worry about the canceled score. It's maybe if this is like your fourth time taking it and the first one was canceled and the second one was something and the third one was something that I would consider. But again, not always really necessary. I think a lot of students think they need to write LSAT addendums. Like, most people don't need to write LSAT addendums. For other things, transcript addenda are very, very important. But for the LSAT, it's not always necessary, and I don't want them spending too much time reading about your LSAT situation. Just have them read the score. Oh, you're very welcome. Are there any other questions today? And then, I'll pray us out at the end. Like I said, just a reminder that my newly released mini course, the personal statement breakdown, the link is below. It is only $37. It's my kind of way of trying to help you guys. I know that this process is very expensive, especially with test prep. And so I want you to have access to quality information, quality, examples of essays so that you can submit the strongest personal statement possible. And so that you can understand what they're really looking for. I love it. I just registered for the November LSAT, LOL. Thank you. See, that is the kind of chutzpah and hustle that I like to see. That's dedication right there. You're going to be a fantastic attorney. I already know it. I'm very excited to hear and keep following you on your journey. So I'm interested, right? Like, let me know how it goes. Keep me updated, because I can just tell that, like, you have that kind of gumption. You have that kind of like, oh, we doing this. So I'm proud of you for registering for the November LSAT, for giving yourself insurance, and for like making sure that you don't end up taking the January LSAT, which it's a whole situation. Any other questions that you guys have? I love coming here and having these lives with you on Fridays. I just think it's honestly one of the highlights of my week. I get to talk to you. I get to learn about you. I love learning about people, and I love helping you on your journey. So this definitely is very special for me. I don't think there are any questions. Maybe I was incredibly thorough today. So we're gonna close out in prayer, but then you guys know if you need anything, I am always here. You can always email me at info@smontgomeryconsulting.com. You can find all kinds of things about my services at law.smontgomeryconsulting.com. So definitely don't be a stranger. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to say thank you for another wonderful Friday. Thank you for allowing us to come together to have this moment where we can get our questions answered, because that's really what it is about. I want to be with everyone who is currently preparing for the October LSAT. They're working diligently. They are trying to balance their application materials, balance working, balance family, balance kids, but also trying to prioritize themselves. I ask that you would be a miracle worker and a way maker and move obstacles out of their way. I ask that you would reduce distractions. I ask that you would move mountains. If there are ways that you can send extra support so that they can really focus on themselves, not because they're being selfish, but because they know that you have called them for greatness. And in every season, you have said that there is a time for different areas of your life. There is a time for just focusing on the task at hand. And so I ask that you would allow them to have that space. I ask that you would be a miracle worker in some calendars. I ask that you would create blocks of time that couldn't exist before. I ask that you would help them create creative ways in order to get the number of hours that they need to study in. I ask that you would also be with all students that are suffering from test anxiety, students who struggle with the difference between performance and their practice, students who are so diligent in how they are working, but when it comes to the test day, they're just not able to do what they had done in practice. But I ask that you would go in and quiet their mind. I ask that you would send breathing techniques. I ask that you would send focusing techniques. I ask that you would send motivation and stamina, because some of these reading comprehension passages are very, very boring, and it's just very difficult to stay interested in what it is that they are saying. So I ask that you would send an abundance of focus, an abundance of interest in the passages. I ask that you would send interesting passages on the October LSAT, that they would not be confusing or on quantum physics or anything, but that they would be easy to understand. I ask that you would be with them as they are trying to find a quiet area to study, that you would send miraculous Wi-Fi and signal and good technology. Dear Heavenly Father, I just ask that you would be with them on this upcoming test, but then you would also give them discernment for the November test. You are a provider and a way maker, and so I ask that you would send the provision to register for the November test, the $200 if a student really needs that insurance. I ask that you would send wisdom to know whether it's a good idea to continue testing or whether they should not continue testing. I also ask that you would send discernment and wisdom over application timing in general, that you would be with students who might be trying to rush the process, that you would slow them down, that you would give them confidence that it's okay to go slower, that it is okay to take their time, that it is okay to have planning and preparation. I ask that you would send guidance for the essays, guidance for the LSAT exam, guidance for letters of recommendation. I ask that you would just be with them in this process. Be with them as they are in the midst of creating the application that will open the door to the rest of their lives and the calling that you have on their life and the impact that they need to make as a community. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you. I thank you for their yearning. I thank you for their desire to be an attorney. I thank you for their bravery, for their courage. We don't often talk about how courageous this journey is. We don't often talk about just the amount of bravery, the sheer gumption it takes to even put yourself out there like this, to open yourself up, to pour your heart out and show your authentic self for complete strangers. But I just thank you that you have given them the motivation to go through with this process, but that you have made them not alone, that you have given them a community, this Barrier Breakers community, that you have given them other support resources, that you have given them sound quality advice, that you have given them the soundness of mind to continue on this path. I ask all of this in your son Jesus' name. Amen. So guys, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with me. As always, if you found this video helpful, make sure that you subscribe. You like this video, share it with a friend, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following and subscribing to the Break Into Law School podcast. And also season 2 of Mindful Prayers for Students is out, so make sure you're subscribed to that. As always, you can submit questions to bit.ly/breakintolawschool, and I will see you guys next week. Bye guys.